This is going to be a rather off-the-cuff reaction to RWBY Ice Queendom's first 3 episodes, which aired today on Crunchyroll Premium. This won't be nearly as in-depth as some of my other content, but I had some thoughts about the episodes that I wanted to get off my chest before it premieres proper in July. There may be small spoilers in this video, so I do recommend that you please stop watching if you don't want to have any details about RWBY Ice Queendom ruined for you. With that said, let's begin. For those who have seen the original RWBY by Monty Oum and Rooster Teeth, there is little here that is going to be overtly surprising in terms of the content. Aside from a little bit of expansion in the exposition, a fair amount of what transpires should be something that you've seen before. As a result, the character dynamics and writing seem to be intended for fans of the original series who maybe don't want to see so much of the original material repeated, but this comes at the price of moving rather quickly for newcomers. Especially given that it plays up Ruby and Weiss having a rather antagonistic attitude towards one another in the beginning, that also means the script has to compensate for that rapidity by resolving some of the antagonism just as fast. Again, that might be fine for people familiar with RWBY already, but that's not the case for everyone. Although the pacing is an issue, the series does present some rather interesting ideas with its 3rd episode. The introduction of the Nightmare Grimm utilizes the concept of the Grimm in a more abstract fashion that the original RWBY never quite pulled off as effectively. Since Grimm are presented as having no souls and are of unknown origin, RWBY Ice Queendom seems to be using that mysterious quality to afford itself a greater sandbox to play in with crafting scenarios. Going into Jean's nightmares, and having that also tied into his relatively untrained state, it is a smart use of both world building and character, and if the show is to have any saving graces, it is in its creativity for taking the Grimm mythos more seriously. The animation and overall look of the show, however, is the one aspect of the first 3 episodes that stands out as being particularly negative. There is an unusual amount of jank in the movement, which is constantly holding the action sequences back. The choreography seems to want to be making the jump into Sakuga territory, but the corrections or the in-betweens have not been finely tuned enough. As a result, it reads as more herky-jerky and jagged than what is attempting to be conveyed. While this may potentially be dismissed as the characters being untrained and not working as a cohesive unit yet, the direction clearly intends to show the sheer dazzling display of their efforts and powers. There are other little animation things that start to accrue rather quickly, such as not having students being in their seats as Weiss battles a Grimm in the classroom, which begs the question of why they don't do that exercise in an arena or open field somewhere on campus, and a Grimm sliding on the ground but with no sliding trails or dirt clouds. Some walk cycles are also a little bit uneven. It ultimately feels like the animation direction was handled so hastily that it never quite was able to find a consistent footing. There are indeed times where it looks quite good, but these are too few and far between to create an engrossing sense of action or escalation. Moving further along, some environments are also stunningly empty or lack nuance and depth. The lighting can also get very odd at times, swinging between bland and hyper-detailed during some action sequences, leaving the palette inconsistent. The character models and larger-scale aesthetic seem to be walking the line between 2D anime and the 3D style look of the original RWBY, almost going for a look that's akin to something like Black Rock Shooter. For the most part, I found it passable, but the eyes are not well designed. They feel rather lifeless, with so much emphasis placed on the iris color that the pupils and other components of the eye are not allowed to be as emotive. While the tone of this video has, for the most part, sounded rather apocalyptic or pessimistic, I do not believe that the series is doomed, but the next 9 episodes really need to make up for the lack of animation direction and art direction, and the series composition needs to take its time in moving from point A to point B. If it can manage to do these things, then I'll be happy, but for now, I'm going to be watching this rather cautiously. This has been ZNote of ZNoteTaku. Happy viewing, everyone!